Welcome on board the Newstrack. I'm Rahul Kamal. One of the biggest mysteries in the Uttar Pradesh elections is why is Behenji Mayawati so inactive? We're just weeks away from the first phase of polling. Mayawati conspicuous by the elephant's absence in this election. Tickets have been given, but there is no large campaigning happening either on social media or even door to door, which is something that the BSP is very capable of. This is about 20% of the votes of Uttar Pradesh. Who does Mayawati's inertia help? Who could it hurt? Where will this vote go? That's my big question on the Newstrack tonight.
State of war UP explodes. But where is Mayawati? BSP Supremo conspicuous by her absence. Where will the Dalit voters go? Has the elephant fallen behind? Big focus on Newstrack.
We're now less than 3 weeks away from the first phase of polling in the big battle of Uttar Pradesh. And the one question that's being asked again and again by voters, by pundits, even by politicians, where is Behenji Mayawati? Now the BSP has been allocating tickets, but outside of that, there is no massive political activity that is visible. Neither on social media like the other parties, nor does Behenji seem to have a heart in the fight. Why? No one knows for sure. We'll try and dive into that in just a moment. But what we are seeing is other parties like the BJP, like the Congress, wonder why is Behenji not fighting as if her political existence depends on the result of this election. Because it does. If the BSP were to lose again, it could be end of the road for Behenji's political innings. It's very difficult to come back after yet another defeat. And therefore, if so much is at stake, why is the elephant conspicuous by its absence?
This was perhaps the last public appearance of BSP Supremo Mayawati. It was her party's Prabuddha Sammelan in Lucknow, aimed at reaching out to the Brahmin community.
ब्राह्मण समाज के लोगों को भी ये वायदा करती हूँ कि यूपी में इस बार बीएसपी की सरकार बनने पर अन्य सभी समाज के लोगों के साथ साथ ब्राह्मण समाज की भी सुरक्षा, सम्मान व तरक्की आदि का सन 2007 में बीएसपी की पूर्ण बहुमत की रही सरकार की तरह ही इनका पुनः पूरा ध्यान रखा जाएगा। संकीर्ण मानसिकता व जातिगत एवं राजनीतिक द्वेष की भावना से जो भी गलत कार्रवाई की गई है, तो फिर बीएसपी की सरकार बनने पर उन सभी मामलों की उच्च स्तरीय जांच कराई जाएगी।
A month later, Mayawati addressed mega rally on party founder Kashi Ram's death anniversary, demanding Bharat Ratna for the late Dalit leader. 3 months later, BSP supporters and even those in opposition are asking just one question: where is Mayawati?
6-7 महीने पहले हम सोचते थे कि सक्रिय नहीं है, उनकी पार्टी सक्रिय नहीं है, हो सकता है कि चुनाव के पास आने के समय शुरू करेंगे। हमें भी बहुत आश्चर्य हुआ कि चुनाव भी आ गया, एकदम चुनाव के हम बीच में हैं और फिर भी सक्रिय नहीं हुई। तो हो सकता है कि भाजपा सरकार का दबाव हो उन पे।
बहन जी की तो अभी ठंड ही नहीं उड़ी है, ये भयभीत है। बहन जी चुनाव आ गया, थोड़ा बाहर निकलिए, बाद में ये न कहना मैंने प्रचार नहीं किया था।
The Election Commission ban on rallies has impacted Mayawati the most, since her core voters and support base is not digitally savvy. Mayawati herself made her social media debut on Twitter in 2018. On Monday, she sent out a series of tweets attacking the BJP and the Yogi Adityanath government on law and order, job losses and migration.
हम लोगों की पार्टी के लोग हों और चाहे बहन मायावती जी हों, वो थ्रू आउट एक्टिव रहे। हम लोगों ने सामने भी आए हैं और बहन मायावती जी जहाँ तक है उनका सवाल है, वो तो पूरे प्रदेश को मॉनिटर कर रही हैं। आपने देखा कि और पार्टियों का आप देख लीजिए हाल क्या है कि अभी ओपनिंग बैट्समैन भी नहीं उतार पाए हैं।
The near absence of BSP Supremo Mayawati from electoral campaign on ground has raised several questions. Where will her core supporters, the Jatavs, go? Akhilesh Yadav has stepped up to mobilize the SC vote. He has welcomed Dalit leaders from the BSP and has promised to nominate them in the reserved constituencies in this election. But Mayawati too has resorted to aggressive social engineering tactics. She is hoping to dent the SPRLD Muslim base in Western UP by fielding 39 Muslim candidates.
Successive electoral losses and the lack of Mayawati's presence on the ground have made the supporters of Bahujan Samaj Party disillusioned. Though the party maintains that Behenji is holding meetings in a house and has an ear to the ground. But will the voter of Bahujan Samaj Party remain intact, or will it switch too? We will know on March 10. With cameraman Neeraj Kumar, Samarth Srivastava for India Today.
The one senior leader of the BSP who's been active on the campaign trail is Satish Chandra Mishra, the Brahmin face of the Bahujan Samaj Party. He's been going from district to district, doing Prabudh Sammelans in each area of Uttar Pradesh. We asked him at a recent Aaj Tak Panchayat about Behenji's absence and what the BSP strategy really was, because Behenji is their big crowd puller, and yet for some inexplicable reason she seems not to have her heart in this big fight in Uttar Pradesh.
उत्तर प्रदेश में पंचायत आज तक में हर पक्ष की आवाज़ उठ रही है, हर तबके के सवाल उठ रहे हैं, और अब बहुजन समाज पार्टी की ओर से हमारे साथ सतीश चंद्र मिश्र जी मंच पर हैं। एक बड़ी दिक्कत आती है लोगों को कि बीएसपी की आवाज़ें कम सुनाई देती हैं। मायावती जी का बहुत सब प्रतीक्षा उनकी करते हैं कि वो सामने कब आएँ, बोलें। लोग कहते हैं कि आप लोग इन चुनावों में भी मिसिंग इन एक्शन ही नज़र आ रहे हैं।
बहन मायावती जी, उन्होंने 7 सितंबर को जब हमारी ये मीटिंगें थीं 75 जिले वाली जब ख़त्म हुई, तो उसके बाद आखिरी मीटिंग में उन्होंने लखनऊ में 20 हज़ार ब्राह्मण समाज के लोग थे और भी थे प्रबुद्ध वर्ग के, तो उनको एड्रेस किया था और मीडिया ने देखा भी। हम लोगों ने मीडिया को इसीलिए बुलाया था कि देख लें। उसके बाद 9 अक्टूबर तो ज़्यादा दिन नहीं हुए, 9 अक्टूबर को 5 लाख से ज़्यादा लोगों को बहन मायावती जी ने एड्रेस किया लखनऊ में ही, और मान्यवर काशी राम जी स्मारक में, जहाँ पर कि 5 लाख से ज़्यादा। मीडिया ने कहा कि 5 लाख, हम लोग तो और ज़्यादा आंकड़ा लगा रहे थे, लेकिन मीडिया की मान लेते हैं 5 लाख। वहाँ पर फिर बहन मायावती जी ने एड्रेस किया। तो
ये भ्रम फैलाने की कोशिश आपको लग रही है कि कहा जा रहा है कि मायावती जी कहाँ हैं, अगर राजनीतिक पार्टियाँ ये सवाल उठा रही हैं?
राजनीतिक पार्टियां डरी हुई हैं, घबराई हुई हैं। हमें ये नहीं समझना राजनीतिक पार्टियों को क्या परेशानी हो रही है। उनको तो अगर ऐसा ही है तो अगर घबराए नहीं है तो उनको तो खुश होना चाहिए, पर वो परेशान है। वो जान रहे हैं कि उनकी ज़मीन खिसक रही है। उनको ये तक तो अभी तय नहीं कर पा रहे हैं कि हम अपने अलायंस को कौन सी सीट देंगे, अलायंस पार्टी को कौन सी देंगे, कैसे करेंगे।
Why is Behenji Mayawati so conspicuous by her absence? Why is the elephant sitting it out of this Uttar Pradesh elections for all practical purposes? Does the BSP think they have no chance? And if they did, why aren't they fighting as if their lives depend on it? Because the political existence of Behenji herself depends on the results of this election. If she's a marginalized force, if her vote bank crashes and cedes further, then it will be very difficult for BSP and for Behenji herself to bounce back. She knows that, surely. Then why is she not more active in this election? For perspective, we're joined on this broadcast by Sudhindra Vaduria, one of the few official spokespeople of the BSP. He's been a long-time watcher of Behenji and her politics. Will give us some insights on what's going on in Mayawati's mind. With us is Ajay Bose. Ajay Bose is a well-known political journalist. He's also author of the book Behenji, a political biography of Mayawati. He's tracked Mayawati's career over the last few decades. With us for a psephological perspective is Yashwant Deshmukh from Sea Voter. He's polling on the ground in Uttar Pradesh and will give us some sense of where the BSP vote is most likely to go. Anila Singh joins us from the BJP. The BJP is hoping that a lot of the Jatav votes of the BSP will come towards the BJP. So they're actually quite happy that Mayawati is not campaigning. Ghanshyam Tiwari joins us from the Samajwadi Party. They were trying to tie up with Chandrashekhar Azad Ravan, the young Jatav leader from Western Uttar Pradesh. That didn't happen. Does that mean that this is a big problem now for the SP, because it seems that the BSP vote could potentially be drifting towards the BJP, or at least that's the BJP's calculation. Let me start by asking Sudhindra Baduria first. If you just give us a very official answer, you will say no, she's campaigning, she's busy in meetings, she's been involved in ticket distribution, which she has. But the fact is that Mayawati isn't fighting this election seriously. You had one rally on the 23rd of July, then there was one on the 7th of September. After that, Mayawati hasn't been seen physically out and about fighting this election. Yogi Adityanath, Priyanka Gandhi Vadra, Amit Shah, all of them were out somewhere or the other. Mayawati aise ghar pe baiti hai. What's she doing sitting at home? Why is she not campaigning more seriously, Mr. Baduria?
Well, I think let us see the elections of the 2022 in the overall perspective that these elections are taking place. First of all, we must remember that last 2 years, the humanity at large, the Indian people also in particular, have gone through a serious COVID crisis. And being very responsible political leaders and as well as citizens, we have to conduct ourselves in the kind of scenario that is existing today. So therefore, as a responsible leader, Bahanji has been fighting this election on the front foot. Let me say this to clear all the doubts which may be clearing from the commentary that you've just made, that Bahanji is fighting this election from the front foot, and we as the political workers of the Bahujan Samaj Party are equally active. You can see from the different videos of social media how our party workers are coming out on the streets, on the farms, in the factories, and the young people also, plus the women and other sections of the society. But of course, we have not been irresponsible enough to say that this is a BJP vaccine and therefore we will not take it. We have not been irresponsible enough to go to the Haridwar Mela and get those people who have returned after that infected in the second phase, and we know what happened with all the COVID victims of the second phase. We have not been also irresponsible like what happened in the West Bengal elections. So therefore, we have conducted ourselves with a certain amount of restraint, and we are fighting these elections, and we will surprise most of you. And all the political pundits who are predicting that we are being decimated. We are not going to be decimated. We will stand up and rise from the Sphinx in this election.
You're talking about BSP videos on social media. Last I checked, on the 24th of January, BSP had 30,433 followers on Twitter, 13,124 likes on Facebook. For perspective, the BJP has 17.3 million Twitter followers, 4.2 million Instagram followers, 15 million Facebook followers, and 4 million subscribers on YouTube. Even the Congress has 8.4 million followers, and I'm not even getting into
that is not the only medium available. That is not the only medium available, Rahul. We are on WhatsApp group. We are on WhatsApp group as well. We are on WhatsApp group, lots of groups, because we are not depending on these Twitters and Facebook alone. We are a large number of people in each district have WhatsApp group. We are active on that, and we are active through smaller meetings in the villages where people don't, we have keep social safe distancing, and we conduct ourselves in a responsible manner.
Sure, but I'm not even getting into the likelihood of a real BSP voter being active on social media. Just probabilistically, of the various parties and the socio-economic profile of the voters, the typical voters, the BSP voter is least likely to be active on any of the major social media. I want to go across to Ajay Bose because very naturally the likes of Sudhindra Bhadoria, and before that we heard from Satish Chandra Mishra insisting that Mayawati is very hands-on. She's doing her meetings, she's monitoring the full state from her house, which is fantastic, but she's sitting at home. Mr. Bhadoria was talking about padding up, but to pad up you need to come out to the park and play. She's sitting at home. You know, whether you're padded up at home doesn't really make any difference. You've seen her politics evolve over the decades, Mr. Bose. Why do you think she's so inactive?
Well, actually, I'm not surprised because, 5 years ago, I wrote the third and final edition of my book, Benji. And I changed my subtitle from the political biography of Mayawati to the rise and fall of Mayawati. And this is not just because she had been repeatedly losing very badly in the elections, but also because there was a huge change in the socio-political landscape in Uttar Pradesh. Now, I have always been fairly sympathetic towards Benji, and she did an amazing thing coming out of nowhere, reaching the pinnacle as she did. But I have seen that her appeal has been declining for some time now, and particularly after the 2019 elections, she has been strangely listless even before COVID set in. I mean, what my old friend Sudhindra Bhadoria says is correct to some extent. These are COVID times, so you can't expect her to be very active. But what really surprised me was that apart from Twitter statements, even the many atrocities against Dalits in UP, she hasn't really jumped into the fray. And it is something which Benji was known for earlier, because she was always known as a tremendous.
Well, why is she not doing it? As somebody who's tracked her profile, you know better than most others. If I were to ask you to peep into her mind and give us your best sense of why is she not fighting as if her life depends on this election, because if she loses another assembly election, the space available to the BSP shrinks even further. She becomes a marginal player from being an important pole in the battle in Uttar Pradesh. Why is she not fighting as if her life depends on it?
Frankly, I'm quite baffled. Although I'm not surprised, because this has been a steady decline. It's not a sudden decision. I personally feel that it is possible that at the moment, she maybe feels that this is not an election where she is going to do well. Today, it is quite clear that the battle is between the BJP and the Samajwadi RLD-led alliance. Every election has a particular challenger and a particular sort of regime, as it were. And I think both sides are matched in a very, very fierce battle. And I think Benji maybe feels that given the kind of resources required to fight these elections in a major way, she's handicapped a lot because, after all, there are all these electoral restrictions. Secondly, she hasn't been particularly active on the ground. She has also seen that out of her 19 legislators which she won in 2017, 13 of them crossed over and went over mostly to the Samajwadi Party. So, she's been left pretty deserted. And at this point, I mean, Mayawati is also getting on. We still have that image of the old Benji. But, and of course, she has surprised people. I'm not ruling her out. You can't rule any politician out. But I personally will be very, very surprised if she shows us something of even a slight glimpse of what she used to be.
Okay, so as the biographer of Benji, you too are baffled by her political inactivity. We've seen the likes of Priyanka Vadra allege Ghanshyam Tiwari that the BJP is using agencies to scare Behenji, that there's the threat that she'll be sent to jail, ED, CBI cases against her. Is that the SP's view as well? Why do you think Behenji is sitting out of this election? And the fact that you couldn't ally with Chandrashekhar, Azad, Ravan, how big a dampener is that, especially in Western Uttar Pradesh, where you were hoping to pull away some of the younger Jatav voters who are disillusioned with Behenji, but now that you don't have Ravan, that might not happen.
Good evening, Rahul, to you, my fellow co-panelists and the viewers. Every election has multiple themes that play out, and as an observer, as a renowned journalist, you look at all the themes. But as the political party in leading this election, leading the voice of the people as we see it, the dominant theme of this election is not what other parties are doing. Dominant theme of this election is what people demand from the government and what parties are offering. As far as SP is concerned, we believe people demand from the government the answer to the pandemic of unemployment, the answer to the pandemic of poverty and inequality, the answer to the injustice that farmers face and the situation farmers face due to stray cattle, and the continuous propaganda that has become the mission of the state by creating disharmony among communities. And people see Akhilesh Yadavji representing simple ideas such as 22 lakh jobs in the IT sector, such as pension.
But that's a rhetorical answer to a very specific question. This, remember, is 20% of the vote bank of Uttar Pradesh. If this is up for grabs, because obviously the BSP voter can see Yashwant Deshmukh that Behenji is not really fighting this election and they wonder where to go. Now, at the village level, the Jatavs are largely antithetical to the Samajwadi Party and therefore are not very likely to switch towards the SP. If they had, say, someone like Chandrashekhar, Azad, Ravan, it may have been different to some extent, but they're unlikely to go to the SP. So therefore, is this really advantage BJP? Where do you see this 20% vote share of Mayawati go? To what extent do you foresee it shrink, and where is it more likely to go? Yashwant Deshmukh.
Well, on the contrary, Rahul, it's ironical and funny to observe another trend that actually BSP going for a meltdown is not a good trend for the BJP. And I have some reasons for that. You know, in our tracker data, I mean, we were the first to report that, you know, when they came together in 2019, the SP and the BSP, the idea was that each one of them is carrying about 22% vote, and together they will come up with somewhere between 40 to 45%, which is good enough to beat the BJP, which was hovering around 41%. But the BJP took the threshold from 40% to 50% in 2019 Lok Sabha elections. And actually from that alliance, Mayawati gained a lot, BSP gained a lot, because Samajwadi Party didn't win big number of Lok Sabha seats. Mayawati eventually managed to win 10 odd seats over there. But overall speaking, her entire shrinkage of the vote share was roughly about 20%, which was like 10% less from the 2007 peak when she formed the government. And everybody is arguing and making a case that that is the rock bottom basic minimum 20% that BSP will poll this way or that way. And I kind of take that point that, okay, that sounds a very legit and right point. But unfortunately, the tracker data is not showing so, because what has happened is that in the bipolarity of the contest, where Samajwadi Party has become a principal opposition, the first problem with that was that just like in West Bengal, where the minority voters even dumped left and the Congress in Murshidabad and Malda belt to swing to Mamata Banerjee, because she was the principal person to defeat in order to defeat the BJP. Similarly, what has happened is that from that 20%, the first casualty is the minority vote, which has gone kind of is swinging lock, stock and barrel to Samajwadi Party right now. And that is the first damage. And actually, BSP going below a certain threshold of 20% is damaging the BJP prospects big time. So I would rather like to give a contrary, another point of view that actually, for whatsoever reason, the BSP not doing well is bad news for the BJP, and BSP doing well is going to be a bad news for Samajwadi Party. So this is where it stacks right now.
Let's build on this further. I want to show our viewers data from 2007 when the BSP won 206 seats. That was Mayawati's political pinnacle, as it were. That time she had 30.43% of the vote. In the next election in 2012, which Akhilesh Yadav won, her vote came down to 25.91, so about 26%, a 4% crash with 80 seats. That crashed further to 22.23, so another about 4% fall in 2017 when she had only 19 seats. In 2019, the BSP had 19.43, so it's come from 30 to 25.91 to 22.23 and finally to about 19.43. The other thing that we know, and that's where I want to press Yashwant Deshmukh, is that if you look at polling data done by CSDS, Access My India, or any of the other agencies that we've been working with, it suggests that the younger Jatav voter has been inclined to shift towards the BJP. So if they're shifting, they're not shifting so much from BSP to SP or BSP to Congress. They're shifting more likely from the BSP, if at all, to the BJP, and therefore in that core vote bank, the point that you make about Muslims and minorities I get, but in that core vote bank, is there a chance that some of the younger Jatavs could then start shifting towards the BJP to its advantage? Because that's what we've seen in actual polling data from the past.
Yeah, that is a distinct possibility. Rahul, I cannot deny that, simply because, on the ground, when there is we always look into the binary of pro-BJP and anti-BJP forces coming together. But in UP, we have to look into also the binary of pro and anti-Samajwadi Party forces coming together. Let's not forget that whatever the love or the hate relationship people have with the BJP, similarly, they also have a love or a hate relationship with Samajwadi Party as well. The 2007 election, with the pinnacle of Mayawati that you said 30%, why did that happen? Simply because big number of upper caste and particularly the Brahmin voters, they swung to Mayawati and BSP because they wanted to defeat the Samajwadi Party. So there happens to be a very substantial, sizable anti-Samajwadi Party vote bank in UP as well. So if at all there could be a polarization against the BJP, there could also be a polarization, counter-polarization against the Samajwadi Party. And if that happens, then obviously, first of all, the damage to BSP was that the non-Jatav Dalit voters, they shifted to the BJP. In 2014, it continued in 17 and consolidated further in 2019. BJP's vote share, please remember, Rahul, even at the peak of 1991 Hindutva wave, when Kalyan Singh became the first BJP chief minister on its own, even at that point of time, BJP polled only about 30% votes, not beyond that. And BJP's 2019 vote of 50%, that was 20% on the top of what Kalyan Singh got at the peak of Hindutva wave. So obviously that all those 20% upswing came from the non-Yadav OBC and non-Jatav Dalit votes. And that continued till 2019. And now, while we are looking only at the anti-BJP vote, I would seriously urge everybody to also look into the possibility of anti-SP vote as well, because that is also a distinct counter-polarization in UP.
Okay, Anila Singh, now there are two completely different questions. One, the charge by people like Priyanka Gandhi Vadra saying that you are scaring the BSP Supremo Mayawati using intimidation tactics, threatening her with the ED, the CBI, and which is why Benji sitting at home, that you are not letting her campaign. How does the BJP respond to that, Anila?
That is a very lame statement made by Priyanka Vadra ji, and she must understand one thing: if ED or any of the agencies, they have to do their work, they are going to do. So we are not here to direct them that you have to target this particular politician or you have to target that particular businessman. So whether a person is Itrwala or whether that person is any politician, if they have done something wrong, then the agencies are going to do their job, and they are doing. But the thing is, those who do not have any other reason, they say that भारतीय जनता पार्टी तो इन एजेंसीज का दुरुपयोग करती है, हम केवल और केवल एजेंसीज का उपयोग करते हैं और ठीक काम के लिए उनका उपयोग होने देते हैं. But let me come back.
Well, it's not that
somehow
simple, Anil Singh, because the moment Swami Prasad Maurya joined one second, Swami Prasad Maurya was in your party for 4.5+ years. He left before the elections to join the Samajwadi Party. The next day, a 6-year-old FIR against him is revived. So please don't tell me that you're not misusing agencies or that you are in any way better than the Congress has been in the past, because you're doing exactly the same, if not worse. So that charge isn't just a hawa mein charge, it's quite substantial and it's quite real.
Those who have not done anything wrong, then they do not have to be scared of any of the agencies. And Bharatiya Janata Party as a political party never ever tells any agency to do their job.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. I believe that just about as much as I believe that till the time a leader is in the BJP, he's having Ganga Jal every day. The moment he goes outside the BJP, that's when he's poisonous. And that therefore Swami Prasad Maurya's FIR was revived the day after he left. Anyway, it's so farcical now that it's not even worth arguing about. What you're doing is plain as day for everyone to see. I want to go to Ajoy Bose because we are seeing two different arguments here, Ajoy, and I want to build on that. The one side is conventional wisdom, which is that the younger Dalit voter no longer feels that Mayawati represents the aggressiveness, the assertiveness he would like his leader to represent, and therefore, especially amongst the non-Jatavs, which is Mayawati's caste, we're seeing a switch to the BJP, whereas the younger Jatavs are attracted to the likes of a Chandrashekhar, Azad, Ravan, and therefore, if the BSP votes contract, it is to the advantage of the BJP. The other theory is that the minority voter who was also backing BSP will move en masse to the Samajwadi Party, and therefore it's actually to SP's advantage. To counter that, BSP has actually given 16 seats in the second phase to Muslims. In the first phase, 16 seats, and in the second phase, 23 seats. So she's giving a lot of important seats to prominent Muslim candidates in the hope that they will retain their own community vote along with the Dalit vote. How do you see this play out? Her inaction, is it advantage SP or is it advantage BJP?
Well, let us try and understand the Dalit vote firstly. You know, when we talk of the Dalit vote, we're talking loosely. Say the Valmikis. They have always been with the BJP for a long time. You know, they are Dalits, but they've always been with the BJP. Then say the Parsis. They have crossed over to the BJP. Now, apparently the Parsis are no longer with the BJP. They have gone to the Samajwadi Party. These are not fixed things. People keep on switching this way and that way. It is true that the Jatavs have stood by Benji more or less as a whole. But even this support has been declining. It is true that a section of Jatavs in 2019 certainly moved away and moved to the BJP because Benji seemed to have so little chance of winning that election in the Lok Sabha votes. Now, where do these Jatavs go? I have a feeling that as far as the Jatavs are concerned, and that is, mind you, not the whole Dalit, the older lot of Jatavs, I think, will stay with Benji. Because that is the kind of brand association which the BSP has built over several decades. The younger ones could scatter. But I was very surprised when I talked to my friends who are Dalit activists who are working across UP. And this is the first time these Dalit activists who have worked for the BSP for so long are telling me that this time they are not working for Mayawati. She firstly doesn't seem to have any chance of winning. Secondly, she doesn't seem to have that much interest either. And a lot of them very surprisingly
So who are they working for this time?
So very surprisingly said that there is a definite movement of Dalit vote towards the Samajwadi Party this time. Now, this seems odd because Samajwadi Party and the BSP have been fighting for a long time. And there is, as you said, there's an anti-Samajwadi Party feeling. But remember, that the Samajwadi Party has been out of power for a long time. So they are no longer seen by the Dalits, at least no longer at the moment, seen as the kind of lathels they were. Also, Akhilesh's personality is a more conciliatory personality than, say, Shivpal Yadav's personality. So I have that, that is also there. So we'll have to see. It's a very interesting situation which way the Jatavs go. Then you have a whole sway
But
of
Sudhindra Bhadoria, what is very clear.
Let me just complete.
And it really is a great.
No, Rahul,
okay.
If I may just complete one sentence.
Go on.
There is a whole sway of lower backward castes.
Go on.
Who have also moved towards the Samajwadi Party, where, as you see with Sami Prasad Maurya and all these people, they have moved there. So, I would not underestimate the Samajwadi Party in being able to pull in a section of the Dalit vote as well.
No, which is where symbolically, maybe not so much in terms of actual votes, but symbolically, having a Chandrashekhar Azad Ravan would have made a big difference to the SP, especially in places like Saharanpur in western UP, where he has some appeal among younger Jatav voters. And there, Ghanshyam Tiwari, and I hope you give me a straight direct answer, not a rhetorical Harvard Kennedy kind of answer, but why couldn't that alliance go through? Because if Chandrashekhar Azad Ravan had been accommodated, it would have been symbolically for that section of vote a very big advantage to the SP, and you couldn't somehow seem to make it happen. It got caught up in an inability to sue the alliance and agree on a fixed number of seats.
I think the simplest answer to this is the fact on this, which is both Chandrashekhar Azad and Akhilesh Yadavji, our national president, have addressed that point blank, that why this alliance could not come together. This election is not a perfect process. It's a continuous battleground, and in that battleground, if a large section of voters starts moving, you have to ask, is this a push that is happening or a pull that is happening? If the hypothesis is that there is a push happening because BJP is not holding the underpinnings of governance from employment to poverty to other things, then where is the pull getting created? Pull is getting created to create an alternate government, and that is where a BSP not visible sufficiently and an Akhilesh Yadavji holding large rallies has created that pull and focusing on the message. Even though the message is very basic, it is not Harvard Kennedy message. It is a very basic message. It's just that BJP does not focus on that message, so it appears sophisticated. But I think there's a push against BJP due to their absolute failure on governance, and there's pull for Akhilesh Yadavji because we have focused on the core agenda of the election.
Would you concede, Sudhindra Bhadoria, that Mayawati no longer appeals to the younger Dalit voters, even to some extent the younger Jatav voters, who want to see their neta out and about, more aggressive? When there's a rape in Hathras or in Agra, Mayawati doesn't make the effort of going out, meeting the family. Even Priyanka Vadra did that. All the BJP leaders went there. And even the TMC came from West Bengal and they came to Hathras. And Mayawati couldn't go from Delhi or Lucknow to Hathras. And when that happens, it just signifies to her 20% vote bank that Didi is not fighting this election, that she simply doesn't have the stomach for a fight.
Well, I would contradict each one of the issues that you have raised, and the reason why I do so is that you are seeing this election as election between two parties, whereas it has been shown time and again in this country. For instance, I will give you two states, and I'll give you one more state which is going through the elections at present, is Punjab. First state I would give is Karnataka, where everybody had written off Deve Gowda's party that it will not be anywhere, close to getting into power, and his son finally became the chief minister. And at that time, the election was shown as Congress versus the BJP. Similarly, we saw that in Maharashtra, the elections were being shown that Sharad Pawar is completely decimated and he will get 8-10. So, and all your surveys and psychologists and intellectuals and all those armchair politicians were saying this. Now, let me tell you that
there's a
in
difference, sir.
Punjab as
the
well,
image of
they had
Sharad
written off the
Pawar
Akali
out
and
in the
BSP
rain.
alliance.
You know, he was out in the rain,
okay, I will take your difference.
Speaking to his voters.
One second.
Despite his age, despite his comorbidities, he was out fighting. Mayawati is not seen as fighting this election. That's the difference. So don't compare Benji with Sharad Pawar.
I have explained. Well, I have explained very clearly that we have not been irresponsible enough to push people in Bengal elections and then push them into the COVID. And we have seen subsequently what happened in the different regions of this country. So we have conducted ourselves in a very responsible manner. We have also done a bit for the elections, and we consider the elections a very important instrument for saving this constitution and also saving democracy. But this does not mean that we push the people into the sea or into some kind of fire where they get trapped.
Okay.
So therefore we have been responsible enough. We have conducted, and let me tell you, I am going to surprise all of you who are in the panel today that BSP will spring a surprise after the elections, and you will see it in the 10th March that Mayawati ji is going to. I spoke to a number of constituencies also. Let me give you in Saharanpur, Nukkad constituency, where Samajwadi Party took the BJP, Mr. Saini over there. Now he is going to come forth. The election there is going to be between the Samajwadi, between the BSP and the BJP, and our candidate who is a minority. Let me give you the case in Muzaffarnagar. The entire minorities, I can give you several social media discussions where the minorities are not voting for the Samajwadi. They say that the Samajwadi want our vote, but they do not want to give a ticket to us. So therefore, people who are sitting in Delhi are debating is one thing, and the real grassroots situation is absolutely different.
Okay, so I'm out of time. I could go on till the end of the night discussing this topic. It's a topic that evokes sharp opinion on both sides of who benefits. The fact that this vote is likely to come down, make no mistake about it. Benji can't take her 20% for granted. Anybody who says this is the minimum she'll get, I disagree. Election after election, it's coming down. Inactivity will see more of this vote fritter away. The jury at this moment is out on who benefits more. Both the BJP and the SP are trying to make a play for the vote. We will see how this cookie ultimately crumbles. I'm slipping into a break. I want to thank all our pundits for joining us.